The silence inside the business class cabin was deafening. 7-year-old Naomi Richardson lay curled on the polished floor, clutching her stomach, her white blouse now marked with a crimson smudge from someone's shoe. Above her stood Margaret Whitmore, a 50-something woman in a Chanel suit, gripping a champagne flute with zero remorse etched across her pale features. 30 passengers sat frozen, phones raised, capturing every second. Doctor. Celeste Richardson knelt beside her daughter, trembling hands, checking for injuries, yet her eyes held something nobody expected when they met Margaret's cold stare. Not rage, not tears, something far more powerful. What this mother did next would shatter the internet, transform a bigot's heart, and reveal a truth so stunning that millions would question everything they thought they knew about justice, mercy, and the courage it takes to break cycles of hate. But before we dive into this incredible story, we want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe that compassion can change even the hardest hearts, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss stories that restore your faith in humanity. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. Now let us take you back to where this all began 3 hours before that devastating kick, to understand how a routine flight became a viral phenomenon. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed overhead as Dr. Celeste Richardson guided her daughter through the business class check-in line. Celeste's scrubs were still visible beneath her coat. She had just finished a 14-hour brain surgery, successfully removing a tumor that 3 other surgeons had deemed inoperable. Her hand still trembled slightly from the adrenaline, but her face showed only calm determination. Naomi clutched her worn copy of Hidden Figures, her bright eyes scanning the pages about Katherine Johnson, calculating trajectories that would send astronauts to the moon. At 7, Naomi already dreamed of becoming an aerospace engineer. She had just won her school's mathematics competition, solving problems meant for 5th graders. "Mommy, did you know Katherine Johnson had to use a separate bathroom just because of her skin color?" Naomi asked, looking up with those impossibly wise eyes. "I did, baby." "But she didn't let that stop her from reaching the stars," Celeste replied, smoothing her daughter's braided hair. They moved forward and lined their boarding passes ready. Behind them, heels clicked impatiently on the tile floor. Margaret Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Estates, shifted her Louis Vuitton bag from one shoulder to the other, her mouth pressed into a thin line of irritation. When Celeste stepped up to the counter, Margaret's voice cut through the ambient airport noise. "Excuse me, I think you are in the wrong line. Economy is over there." She pointed toward the longer queue with a manicured finger. The check-in agent, Kevin Chen, a 28-year-old with kind eyes, smiled professionally. "Actually, ma'am, Dr. Richardson and her daughter are confirmed in seats 2A and 2B, business class." Margaret's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, I see." The words dripped with something ugly. Kevin processed their boarding passes with efficient keystrokes. "Dr. Richardson, thank you for your patience. You and Naomi are all set. Enjoy your flight to New York." As they walked away, Naomi tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, what did that lady mean?" "Nothing important, sweetheart. Some people make assumptions." But Margaret's voice carried as they headed toward security. Affirmative action is everywhere these days. Naomi stopped walking. "Mommy, what's affirmative action?" Celeste knelt down to her daughter's level, aware of curious eyes around them. "It's something we'll talk about later, okay? Right now, let's get through security so we can get some of those cinnamon rolls you love." In the VIP lounge, Celeste and Naomi found seats near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway. Naomi returned to her book while Celeste checked her phone. Messages from the hospital flooded her screen. The patient from her marathon surgery was stable, vitals improving. She allowed herself a small smile. Across the lounge, Margaret sat with rigid posture, scrolling through emails that only seemed to deepen the furrow between her brows. Every few minutes, her gaze drifted toward Celeste and Naomi with unmistakable disdain. When Naomi got up to grab a cup of orange juice from the refreshment bar, her small hands struggled with the heavy pitcher. Juice splashed across the marble counter, a few drops landing near the edge of Margaret's table, nowhere close to actually touching her or her belongings. Celeste immediately rushed over with napkins. "I am so sorry." "Naomi, be more careful, honey." "It's okay, Mommy. I'll clean it up." Naomi grabbed napkins, her little hands working quickly. Margaret stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is exactly why some people do not belong in first class. No manners, no class, no sense of decorum. A man in a business suit, Robert Hayes, looked up from his laptop. "Ma'am, it was just an accident. The child is cleaning it up." Margaret's head snapped toward him. "You are too soft, Mr. Hayes. This is what is wrong with America today. No standards, no accountability. Everyone gets a trophy, everyone gets business class, regardless of whether they have earned it or know how to behave in civilized spaces." Celeste placed a gentle hand on Naomi's shoulder. "Come on, baby. Let's go sit down." They returned to their seats, but Naomi's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Mommy, why is she so mean?" "Some people carry pain inside them, and it comes out in hurtful ways," Celeste said softly. "But that is about her, not about us. You did nothing wrong." Boarding began 30 minutes later. As they walked down the jet bridge, Naomi held her mother's hand tightly. The business class cabin gleamed with leather seats and ambient lighting. Their seats 2A and 2B were in the second row on the left side of the aircraft. Margaret's seat was directly in front of them. 1A, the coveted front row window seat. Flight attendant Dana Martinez, a warm woman in her 30s, with kind eyes and a genuine smile, greeted them. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Richardson. And who is this beautiful young lady?" "I'm Naomi. I'm 7 3/4. Naomi held up her book. "And I'm going to work for NASA someday." Dana's smile widened. "I believe you will. Let me know if you need anything during the flight, okay?" As they settled into their seats, Margaret called Dana over with a sharp finger snap. "Excuse me, I specifically requested a quiet section. I was not informed there would be children nearby." Dana's professional smile never wavered. "Ma'am, this is our business class cabin. Families are welcome in all sections of the aircraft. Is there something specific I can help you with?" "I want to be moved. Immediately." "I apologize, but we are completely full today. I can offer you noise-canceling headphones if you would like." Margaret's jaw clenched. "This is unacceptable. I pay premium prices to avoid exactly this type of situation." A man in a business suit, Robert Hayes, looked up from his laptop. "Ma'am, it was just an accident. The child is cleaning it up." Margaret whirled around. "Control your child, or I will call the flight attendant every single time she disturbs me." Celeste leaned forward slightly, her voice measured and calm. "Naomi, sweetheart, please keep your feet still. We need to respect other passengers' space." "Sorry, Mommy." Naomi pulled her legs up, tucking them beneath her. As the plane filled with passengers, Celeste closed her eyes, exhaustion from the surgery finally catching up with her. She had saved a life today. She had used her hands, her mind, her years of training to give someone more time with their family. That mattered. That was real. This woman's rudeness was just noise. But Naomi stared at the back of Margaret's head, trying to understand why someone would dislike her without even knowing her name. The plane's engines roared to life. The flight attendants demonstrated safety procedures. And somewhere between the runway and the clouds, the situation that would change all their lives began its inexorable escalation. At 30,000 feet, the cabin leveled off and the seatbelt sign chimed off. Naomi unbuckled carefully, looking up at her mother. "Mommy, I need to use the bathroom." Celeste pressed the call button. Dana appeared within moments. "How can I help you? Could you show my daughter where the lavatory is, please?" "Of course." Dana extended her hand to Naomi. "Come with me, sweetheart." Naomi followed Dana down the aisle, her small frame navigating the business class cabin with careful steps. On the way back, distracted by the interesting panel of buttons near the galley that Dana was explaining, Naomi did not notice Margaret had extended her arm into the aisle while reading something on her iPad. The collision was gentle. Naomi's shoulder barely grazed Margaret's forearm, but the iPad, perched precariously on Margaret's lap, slipped from her grip and clattered to the floor. The screen spiderwebbed with cracks. Margaret's gasp was theatrical. "You little brat! Do you know how much this costs? Do you have any idea what you have just done?" Naomi froze, eyes wide with terror. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Celeste unbuckled and stood immediately. "I am so sorry, ma'am. Naomi, come here." Apologize properly. Naomi's voice shook. I am really sorry, ma'am. I did not see your arm. It was an accident. Margaret snatched up the damaged iPad, holding it like evidence at a trial. Sorry does not fix things. Sorry does not replace a $1,000 device. Your mother should teach you to watch where you are going, instead of letting you run wild on an airplane. Celeste reached for her purse. Please let me pay for the damage. I can transfer money right now or give you my information for reimbursement. How much is the replacement cost? It is not about the money. Margaret's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby passengers. It is about respect. It is about accountability. People like you get everything handed to you through quota systems and diversity initiatives, and you never learn basic responsibility or manners. The cabin went silent. Every conversation stopped. Passengers turned to look. Celeste's hand tightened on her purse strap, but her voice remained level. I am not sure what you mean by people like me, but I am offering to compensate you for the damage. Please tell me the amount. Margaret stood her 5'7" frame, trying to tower over Celeste's 5'9". Do not play dumb with me. You know exactly what I mean. Diversity hires affirmative action, DEI programs. You probably got your position because of your skin color, not because of your actual qualifications. And now your undisciplined child destroys other people's property with no consequences. Robert Hayes unbuckled and stood. Ma'am, that is completely inappropriate and frankly racist. Dr. Richardson is being more than reasonable. Racist Margaret's laugh was bitter. I am exercising my right to free speech. If you people cannot handle honesty, that is your problem, not mine. Dana rushed over her professional composure, barely masking her alarm. Ladies, gentlemen, please, let us all take a breath and lower our voices. We are in a confined space. Margaret pointed at Celeste and Naomi. I want them removed from business class. They have assaulted me and damaged my property. I paid for a peaceful flight, and I demand you move them to economy immediately. Dana's voice remained calm but firm. Ma'am, I cannot move passengers from their assigned seats without cause. An accidental bump does not constitute grounds for relocation. Dr. Richardson has offered to pay for the damage. I suggest we all take a moment to calm down. Calm down, Margaret's face flushed red. I will not calm down. First they take our jobs through forced diversity. Then they take our seats on airplanes. Now they are destroying our property. When does it end? She turned back to her seat, but continued muttering loud enough for everyone to hear. Thugs and welfare queens everywhere you look. They do not belong in spaces like this. They do not have the breeding, the culture, the class. Naomi pulled on her mother's sleeve, whispering, Mommy, why does she hate us? We did not do anything bad. Celeste knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. She does not hate you, baby. She does not even know you. She is just hurting inside, and hurt people sometimes hurt others. Margaret overheard and spun around. Hurting? You think you know about hurt? Your kind has destroyed everything my family built for generations. You have no idea what real suffering looks like. Captain James Morrison, a 55-year-old veteran with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, emerged from the cockpit. What seems to be the problem here? Dana quickly explained the situation while Margaret interrupted repeatedly with her version, each iteration painting herself as the victim of assault and discrimination. Morrison listened patiently, then addressed Margaret directly. Ma'am, I understand you are upset about your device. However, your language and behavior are creating a disturbance. I am going to need you to return to your seat and lower your voice, or I will have no choice but to restrain you and have authorities meet us upon landing. Restrain me, Margaret's voice hit a shrill note. I am the victim here. These people attacked me, and now you are threatening me. This is outrageous. Celeste gently guided Naomi back to their seats. She buckled her daughter in, then sat down herself, hands shaking in her lap where no one could see. Naomi's face crumpled. Mommy, I did not mean to break her iPad. I did not mean to make her so angry. I know, baby. I know. Celeste pulled her daughter close. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes accidents happen. That is part of being human. Margaret whirled around. Control your child or I will call the flight attendant every single time she disturbs me. And now her 7-year-old daughter was feeling it too. The cabin slowly returned to its previous state of humming engines and quiet conversations. But the tension remained thick and suffocating. Margaret sat rigidly in her seat, occasionally turning to glare at Celeste and Naomi. Other passengers whispered to each other, some shaking their heads in disgust at Margaret, others studiously avoiding eye contact with everyone. Robert Hayes caught Celeste's eye and mouthed, "I am sorry." She nodded slightly in acknowledgement. 45 minutes passed. The flight attendants served drinks and snacks. Dana brought Naomi a special cookie with a sympathetic smile. Margaret ordered her third glass of champagne, and in that deceptive calm, no one anticipated the violence that was about to erupt. Turbulence rocked the aircraft gently, nothing severe, just the normal bumps of flying through winter air currents. The seatbelt sign chimed on, but Naomi's stomach, already churning with anxiety from the earlier confrontation, could not wait. "Mommy, I really need to go to the bathroom," she whispered urgently. Celeste glanced at the illuminated sign. "Can you wait just a few minutes until the turbulence passes?" Naomi squirmed. "I do not think so." Celeste pressed the call button. Dana arrived, noted the situation, and made a judgment call. "It is just light chop. I will take her quickly." They unbuckled and moved swiftly toward the lavatory. 2 minutes later, they returned. The plane gave a sudden lurch. Naomi stumbled forward, her small body thrown off balance. Her foot came down directly in the space between Margaret's seat and the wall, technically Margaret's legroom area. What happened next would be debated in comment sections, courtrooms, and living rooms for months to come. Margaret's leg shot out. Her heel connected with Naomi's stomach with shocking force. The 7-year-old flew backward, landing hard on the carpeted aisle, arms wrapped around her midsection, mouth open in a silent scream that turned into wailing sobs. The entire cabin erupted. "Oh my God! Did she just kick that child? Someone get a doctor." Celeste shoved past a frozen passenger and dropped to her knees beside her daughter. "Naomi, baby, let me see. Move your hands." Naomi could not speak through her tears. Her whole body shook. A red mark was already forming on her white blouse where Margaret's heel had made contact. Margaret stood smoothing her skirt, her face a mask of cold indifference. "She stepped on my foot. I simply moved her away. If she had been watching where she was going, this would not have happened." "You kicked her." A woman across the aisle held up her phone. "I recorded the whole thing. That was not a push. That was a deliberate kick to a child's stomach." Robert Hayes unbuckled and came over, his lawyer instincts sharp. "I witnessed it as well. That was assault on a minor. Completely unprovoked and excessive." Other passengers chimed in, their voices overlapping in condemnation. "That poor baby. Call the police when we land." What kind of monster kicks a 7-year-old? Dana rushed over with the first aid kit, her hands trembling. "Dr. Richardson, what do you need?" Celeste was in full physician mode now, despite the terror clawing at her chest. She gently probed Naomi's abdomen, checking for signs of internal injury. "Naomi, baby, look at me. Does it hurt when I press here? Can you take a deep breath?" Naomi hiccuped and tried to breathe, wincing. "It hurts, Mommy. It hurts so bad." Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. "She is fine. Children are dramatic. She barely touched my foot, and now everyone is acting like I committed a crime." Captain Morrison appeared again, his expression thunderous. "Ma'am, return to your seat immediately. Do not speak another word." "I will not be silenced. This is absurd. I am the one who was stepped on. I am the victim here." Morrison's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "Sit down now." For the first time, something like fear flickered across Margaret's face. She sat. Morrison knelt beside Celeste. "Doctor, does your daughter need immediate medical attention? I can divert to the nearest airport if necessary." Celeste continued her examination, her medical training overriding her emotional response. "The impact was significant, but I do not feel any obvious internal bleeding or organ damage. She will have severe bruising. I want x-rays when we land to rule out any fractures, but I think she will be okay. Do you want me to restrain the passenger who did this?" Celeste looked up at Margaret, who sat with arms crossed, face turned toward the window. Every fiber of Celeste's being screamed for justice, for punishment for this woman to feel even a fraction of the pain her daughter was experiencing. But then, she felt Naomi's small hand grip hers. She looked down into her daughter's tear-stained face, saw the confusion and hurt there, and made a decision that went against every instinct. "Not yet," Celeste said quietly. "Let me talk to her first." Morrison frowned. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." The cabin watched in stunned silence as Dr. Celeste Richardson, who had every right to demand immediate arrest and prosecution, instead helped her sobbing daughter into a seat, dried her tears, and spoke in a voice so calm it seemed impossible. "Naomi, sweetheart, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What just happened was wrong, very wrong. That woman hurt you and she should not have done that." Naomi nodded, hiccuping. "But I want you to watch what happens next. I want you to learn something today that I hope you will carry with you for the rest of your life. Can you be brave for me?" "I will try, Mommy." Celeste kissed her daughter's forehead, then stood. She turned to face Margaret's seat, and every person in that cabin leaned forward, waiting to see what would happen when a mother confronted the woman who had just assaulted her child. But what Celeste Richardson said next would shock them even more than the kick itself. "Miss Whitmore, I would like to speak with you privately. Captain Morrison, may we use the area near the galley?" Morrison hesitated, then nodded. "I will be right there supervising. 3 feet away, at all times." Margaret stood reluctantly, her earlier bravado wavering under the weight of dozens of hostile stares. She followed Celeste to the galley area, Morrison positioning himself where he could intervene instantly if needed. Dana stayed with Naomi, offering her water and quiet comfort. In the galley, Margaret prepared herself for a screaming match, possibly even physical retaliation. She deserved it. Some distant part of her knew she deserved it. But the armor of her rage and grief would not let her acknowledge that aloud. Celeste spoke first, her voice low enough that only Margaret and Morrison could hear clearly. "I want to tell you a story." Margaret's eyebrows shot up. "I do not want to hear some sob story about how hard your life has been. I have heard it all before." "It is not about me," Celeste said calmly. "It is about you." That stopped Margaret cold. "What?" 15 years ago, in October of 2004, I was a second-year neurosurgery resident at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. It was 3 in the morning. I had been on shift for 18 hours. I was exhausted, barely keeping my eyes open. Margaret said nothing, but her rigid posture shifted slightly. The emergency department called a code. Massive brain hemorrhage. Female patient, 33 years old, found unconscious in her home by her husband. By the time they got her to us, she had been without adequate oxygen for several minutes. The attending physician took one look at the scans and said, "We should make her comfortable. Let her go." Celeste's eyes never left Margaret's face. But something on those scans caught my attention. A small detail the attending had missed because he was focused on the obvious massive damage. There was a chance, a tiny chance, that if we operated immediately and relieved the pressure in one specific area, we might save her. Margaret's face had gone pale. The attending did not want to risk it, said the patient was as good as gone. But I begged him. I showed him what I saw. Finally, he agreed to let me try under his supervision. We operated for 6 hours. It was the most complex surgery I had ever been part of at that point in my career. Celeste paused. "The woman's name was Elizabeth Whitmore, your sister." The color drained completely from Margaret's face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Your nephew Christopher and your niece Catherine were in the waiting room that entire time. Christopher was 10, Catherine was 8. I remember because after the surgery I went out to tell the family she had survived. Christopher hugged me and would not let go. Catherine asked if she could draw me a picture. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. "You are lying! You are making this up!" Celeste pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, and held up the screen. It showed a much younger Celeste in scrubs surrounded by a medical team standing beside a hospital bed. In that bed, barely visible, was a woman with dark hair. Margaret stared at the photo and recognition crashed over her like a wave. "Elizabeth told me," she whispered. She told me a black woman doctor saved her life when everyone else had given up. But I did not. You did not believe her, Celeste finished gently. Or if you did, you thought she was exaggerating. Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. She tried to find you. She sent letters to the hospital for years, trying to thank you properly. She said you never responded. I did not respond because I was just doing my job. I did not need thanks. I needed to save lives. Celeste's voice remained steady, but there was an edge to it now. Your sister has a beautiful family now, Margaret. She watched both her children graduate high school. She walked Catherine down the aisle at her wedding last year. She is about to become a grandmother for the first time. Margaret collapsed against the galley counter, sobs racking her body. I did not know. I did not know it was you. Of course you did not know, because you never saw me. You saw a black woman in business class and assumed she did not belong there. You saw my daughter and assumed she was undisciplined. You filled in a narrative based on nothing but the color of our skin. Now, before we continue with what happened next, I want to ask you something. Do you think Celeste was right to tell Margaret this story? Should she have just demanded immediate arrest instead? Comment number 1 if you think compassion can change people, or comment number 2 if you think Margaret deserved harsher consequences right away. And make sure you have hit that like button and subscribed, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about justice and mercy. Here is the question everyone was asking. What else did Celeste know that she had not revealed yet? Because the truth about Marcus Blackwell was still hidden, waiting to detonate. But first, Margaret needed to understand the depth of her own pain. 3 months ago, Margaret said, through her tears, I lost everything. And with those words, the real story behind her hatred finally emerged. Margaret's whole body shook as 15 years of buried grief came pouring out. Morrison shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or allow this confession to continue. 3 months ago, a man destroyed my life, Margaret began, her voice raw. His name was Marcus Blackwell. He was the CEO of a development company I partnered with for the biggest real estate project Whitmore Estates had ever attempted, a $200 million luxury resort development. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, mascara smearing. Marcus was charming, professional, impressive. He had credentials from Harvard Business School, letters of recommendation from senators, a portfolio of successful projects, and he was black. Celeste remained silent, listening. I prided myself on being open-minded, Margaret continued, and now there was bitter self-awareness in her tone. I thought, look at me, partnering with a black-owned firm. I am progressive. I am part of the solution. But it was all a lie. Every piece of paper, every credential, every reference, fabricated. Marcus Blackwell was not even his real name. Over 6 months, he systematically embezzled money from our joint accounts. $23 million. Gone. Margaret's voice cracked. When it all came crashing down, when the FBI started investigating, when our assets were frozen, when the lawsuits started piling up, my son Julian could not handle the pressure. He was 26 years old. He had just joined the family business. He felt responsible, even though it was not his fault. She paused, struggling to get the next words out. He killed himself. Drove his car off a bridge on a Tuesday morning in September, left a note saying he had failed the family legacy, that he was sorry for not seeing through Blackwell's lies. Celeste closed her eyes briefly, genuine pain crossing her features. I found him, Margaret whispered. I was the one who identified the body. And in my grief, in my rage, I did something unforgivable. I took the actions of one evil man and projected them onto everyone who shared his skin color. I convinced myself that I had been targeted because I was white, that there was some kind of agenda, that people like Blackwell were everywhere taking what did not belong to them. She looked directly at Celeste now. I became a monster. I said horrible things online. I joined groups that spewed hatred. I told myself I was just being realistic, just protecting myself. But I was really just poisoning my own soul. Elizabeth tried to reach out, Margaret continued. She called me every day for 2 weeks after Julian's funeral. She wanted to help, to support me. And do you know what I said to her? Celeste shook her head. I told her that the doctor who saved her life was probably a diversity hire who got lucky. I told her that people were getting opportunities they did not deserve, while qualified people were being passed over. I said unspeakable things. And she stopped calling. Margaret's shoulders sagged. Today was supposed to be my last chance. I was flying to New York to meet with potential investors who might save what is left of my company. But I woke up angry. I have been angry for 3 months straight. And when I saw you and your daughter in that business class line, something in me just snapped. I saw Marcus Blackwell, she said quietly. I saw every imagined slight, every perceived injustice. I saw targets for my rage, and I treated you both abhorrently. She turned to look back toward where Naomi sat with Dana. And then, I kicked a 7-year-old child, a baby, because she accidentally stepped near my foot. Margaret faced Celeste again, her eyes red and swollen. How can you even stand to look at me? How are you not screaming? How are you not demanding I be arrested immediately? Celeste was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Because I understand pain, Margaret. 5 years ago, my husband Terrence was killed by a drunk driver, hit and run. The driver was never caught. Left Terrence bleeding on the side of the road and drove away. Margaret inhaled sharply. I was pregnant with Naomi at the time, Celeste continued, 7 months along. When the police came to tell me, I went into early labor from the shock. Naomi was born 2 months premature. I spent weeks in the NICU watching my daughter fight for her life while planning my husband's funeral. I know what it is like to lose someone you love senselessly. I know what it is like to be consumed by rage at the unfairness of it all. And I know how tempting it is to let that rage define you. Margaret was openly weeping now, but I also know that if I had let hatred take root in my heart, it would have destroyed me and my daughter. It would have made Terrence's death meaningless. So I made a choice. I chose to honor his memory by being the kind of person he believed I was. Kind, compassionate, strong. Celeste stepped closer. You kicked my daughter, Margaret. You hurt her physically and emotionally. And yes, there will be consequences for that. But I also see a woman who is drowning in grief and has been grasping at hatred because it feels better than feeling the pain underneath. I do not deserve your understanding, Margaret choked out. No, Celeste agreed. You do not. But I am giving it to you anyway. Not because you have earned it, but because that is who I choose to be. That is the lesson I want my daughter to learn today. Morrison, who had been silently witnessing this entire exchange, had tears in his own eyes. Margaret slowly sank to her knees in the galley of that airplane 30,000 feet above the earth and wept like a child. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Celeste did not offer false comfort. She simply said, sorry is a start, but it is only a start. The real question is what you do next. Celeste returned to where Naomi sat with Dana. The little girl's eyes were still red from crying. One hand pressed gently against her bruised stomach. Mommy, are you okay? Naomi asked, reading the exhaustion on her mother's face. I am okay, baby. How about you? Does it still hurt a lot? A little bit. But, Mommy, why did you go talk to that mean lady? Why were not you angry? Celeste sat down and pulled Naomi onto her lap, careful of the injury. I was angry, sweetheart. I still am. What she did to you was wrong, and I will never forget it. Then why did you not yell at her? Dana quietly excused herself to give them privacy, though she remained nearby in case they needed anything. Celeste took a deep breath. Naomi, you are going to meet a lot of people like Miss Whitmore in your life. People who will judge you before they know you. People who will assume things about you because of how you look, but it was all a lie. Every piece of paper, every credential, every reference. Fabricated. Marcus Blackwell was not even his real name. Over 6 months, he systematically embezzled money from our joint accounts. $23 million. Gone. Naomi's lower lip trembled. That is not fair. So, what do I do when people are mean to me? Celeste cupped her daughter's face in her hands. You remember this, baby. Their hate is their burden, not yours. You do not have to carry it. You do not have to let it change who you are. But she kicked me, Mommy. She really hurt me. But it was all a lie. Every piece of paper, every credential, every reference, fabricated. Marcus Blackwell was not even his real name. Over 6 months, he systematically embezzled money from our joint accounts. $23 million. Gone. Naomi shook her head. Then there would just be more hate in the world, and that hate would live inside me, poisoning me a little bit every day. It would make me suspicious of people. It would make me bitter. It would make me less than who I am meant to be. Naomi was quiet, processing this. So you talked to her nicely to protect yourself. Celeste smiled slightly. Partly, but also to protect you. Because you were watching, baby. You were watching to see how Mommy handles someone who hurts us. And I wanted to show you that we can be strong without being cruel. We can demand justice without becoming hateful. Did the lady say sorry? She did, and she meant it. Does that make it okay? No. An apology does not erase what happened. You are still hurt. I am still angry. But it is a beginning. She has a lot of work to do to become a better person. Naomi leaned against her mother's chest. Mommy, my stomach hurts. But my heart hurts more. Celeste held her tighter. Why does your heart hurt, sweetheart? Because I feel sad for that lady. She must be really, really sad inside to be so mean on the outside. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. She had never been more proud of her daughter. You have the most beautiful soul, Naomi Richardson. Do not ever lose that. Do not let the world make you hard. I will try, Mommy. They sat together in silence for a few moments. Then Naomi asked quietly, Can we still help her? Even though she hurt me. What do you mean, baby? You always say that when people are hurting, we should try to help if we can. Is the lady hurting? Celeste marveled at her 7-year-old daughter's wisdom. Yes, she is hurting very badly. Then we should help her. Because that is what we do, right? We help people who are hurting. Even people who have hurt us. Naomi thought about this seriously. Especially people who hurt us. Because if we do not help them, they will just keep hurting other people. Celeste kissed the top of her daughter's head. You are absolutely right. And that, my love, is what makes you extraordinary. Robert Hayes, who had been sitting nearby and overheard some of the conversation, leaned over. Dr. Richardson, your daughter is remarkable. You both are. Thank you, Celeste said softly. A woman across the aisle who had been one of the people recording the incident put her phone away and spoke up. I have never seen anything like this. Most people would be screaming for blood right now. How are you so calm? Celeste met her eyes. Because I am a mother. And the greatest thing I can teach my daughter is not how to hate people who hurt her, but how to rise above that hurt with dignity and grace. Our ancestors survived slavery by refusing to let their oppressors destroy their humanity. I will not dishonor their legacy by teaching my child that hate is the answer to hate. The woman nodded slowly, visibly moved. I am going to delete my video. This is not something that needs to be turned into viral outrage. This is something sacred. But Robert shook his head. Actually, if Dr. Richardson agrees, I think the world needs to see this. Not the hate, the healing. People need to see what real strength looks like. I know. And there will be consequences for that. But do you know what would happen if I responded to her hate with my own hate? I promise, the woman said. I am a journalist. Let me tell this story the right way. Celeste looked down at Naomi. What do you think, baby? Should we let people know what happened today? Naomi nodded. Maybe it will help other kids who get hurt by mean people. Maybe they will know they can be strong like us. Okay then, Celeste agreed. Tell the whole truth. Show everything. What no one knew yet was that Celeste had already made another decision, one that would turn this story from remarkable to absolutely stunning. As the plane began its descent into New York, Captain Morrison approached Celeste again. His expression was serious, professional, but there was profound respect in his eyes. Dr. Richardson, we will be landing in approximately 20 minutes. There will be police and medical personnel waiting. I need to know your intentions. Do you want to press charges against Miss Whitmore for assault on a minor? Every passenger within earshot went silent, waiting for her answer. Celeste looked at Naomi, who was watching her mother with those impossibly wise eyes. Then she looked toward the front of the cabin where Margaret sat alone, her earlier arrogance completely shattered. "Captain Morrison, may I speak with my daughter privately for a moment?" "Of course." Celeste turned to Naomi. "Sweetheart, the captain is asking if I want the police to arrest Miss Whitmore when we land. She could go to jail for what she did to you, but I want to know what you think. This happened to you. You get a say in what happens next." Naomi bit her lip, thinking hard. If she goes to jail, will that make her not sad anymore? Probably not. Will it make her stop being mean to people? Maybe. Or maybe it will just make her angrier. Then, I do not want her to go to jail, Naomi said firmly. But I want her to say she is sorry for real. And I want her to learn how to be nice to people who look different from her. Because if she does not learn, she will just keep hurting kids like me. Celeste pulled her daughter close. "You are the bravest person I have ever known." She turned back to Morrison. "Captain, I do not want to press criminal charges, but I do want a formal incident report filed. I want Miss Whitmore to be required to attend counseling specifically focused on addressing racial bias. And I want her to complete 100 hours of community service with organizations that serve Black children." Morrison raised his eyebrows. "That is remarkably lenient, Dr. Richardson." "It is not about leniency. It is about creating actual change. Jail will not change her. But facing what she has done, understanding why it was wrong, and actively working to repair the harm that might actually transform her. I will convey your wishes to the authorities. But Miss Whitmore will still likely face consequences from the airline. She may be banned from future flights." "That is appropriate," Celeste agreed. Morrison nodded and walked toward the front of the cabin. He gestured for Margaret to stand. "Miss Whitmore, please, come with me." Margaret stood on shaking legs. Morrison led her back to where Celeste and Naomi sat. "Dr. Richardson has made her wishes known regarding potential charges," Morrison said. "But before we land, she has requested that you address her daughter directly." Margaret looked down at Naomi and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Slowly, incredibly, she lowered herself to her knees in the aisle of the airplane. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Margaret's voice shook. "I am so sorry for what I did to you. There is no excuse. None. I hurt you. I said terrible, hateful things. I behaved in a way that was cruel and wrong." Naomi watched her silently. "I lost my son 3 months ago," Margaret continued. "His name was Julian. He was a wonderful person, kind and smart and funny. When he died, I was so angry that I let that anger turn into hate. I started seeing enemies everywhere, especially people who looked like you and your mother. But that was wrong. You did not hurt my son. You did not do anything to me. You are just a beautiful little girl who was trying to go to the bathroom on an airplane. And I hurt you because I was too broken to see clearly." Margaret's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Your mother is one of the best people I have ever met. 15 years ago, she saved my sister's life when other doctors had given up. And today, even after I assaulted you, she showed me more grace and mercy than I could have imagined. I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I am asking for it anyway. And I promise you, Naomi, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better. I will never hurt another child. I will never let my pain become an excuse to harm others. I will learn. I will change. Because you and your mother have shown me what real strength looks like." The cabin was completely silent, except for the sound of Margaret's quiet crying. Naomi looked at her mother. Celeste nodded gently, letting her daughter make her own choice. Naomi slid off her seat and stood in front of Margaret. "I forgive you, Miss Whitmore, but you have to promise to be nicer to people, even people who do not look like you, because everybody deserves to be treated nice." Margaret nodded vigorously. "I promise. I swear to you, I promise." Then Naomi did something no one expected. She reached out and hugged Margaret. Margaret broke down completely carefully, putting her arms around this small child she had brutalized, sobbing into her shoulder. Thank you so much." The entire business class cabin erupted in applause. People were crying openly. Robert Hayes had his phone out recording every second. The woman journalist had tears streaming down her face as she captured the moment. When Margaret finally released Naomi and stood, she looked around at all the passengers who had witnessed her hatred and her breakdown. "I am sorry to all of you as well. You should not have had to witness my behavior. I am deeply ashamed." As the plane touched down on the runway, something remarkable happened. Passengers began standing one by one and forming a line to speak with Margaret. Some offered words of forgiveness. Others shared their own stories of loss and redemption. A few simply squeezed her hand in solidarity. By the time the plane reached the gate, Margaret Whitmore was surrounded by people who an hour ago would have happily seen her arrested. Now they were offering support business cards for therapists, invitations to support groups for grieving parents. The police and paramedics boarded. The paramedics checked Naomi thoroughly. Bruising, definitely. Possibly a minor soft tissue injury. But no broken ribs, no internal bleeding. She would be sore for a week, but would recover completely. The police took statements. When they asked Celeste if she wanted to press charges, she repeated her conditions. The officers looked at Margaret with a mixture of confusion and respect. "Ma'am, do you understand how fortunate you are?" Margaret nodded. "More than you know." One of the officers pulled Celeste aside. "Dr. Richardson, I have to tell you, in 15 years of law enforcement, I have never seen anything like this. You have every right to want this woman prosecuted to the fullest extent." "I know," Celeste said, "but punishment without rehabilitation just creates more brokenness. I want her to change, really change, and I do not think jail will accomplish that." The officer shook his head in wonder. "You are a better person than I would be. I am just a mother, trying to teach my daughter that the cycle has to stop somewhere." As the last passengers filed off the plane, Margaret's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw her sister Elizabeth's name. With trembling hands, she answered. "Margaret, oh, thank God you picked up." Elizabeth's voice was breathless with excitement. "They caught him. The FBI caught Marcus Blackwell." Margaret froze. "What, when, where?" "In Miami. They arrested him about an hour ago." "They recovered most of the money, Margaret, $21 million in offshore accounts. The FBI said they received an anonymous tip that led them right to him." Margaret's legs gave out. She sat down hard in one of the now empty seats. An anonymous tip from who? They would not say. But whoever it was provided detailed information about his location, his fake identities, his bank accounts, everything. The FBI agent said it was one of the most comprehensive tips they had ever received. Margaret's eyes slowly moved to where Celeste was gathering Naomi's things. "Elizabeth, I have to call you back." "Wait, are you okay? You sound strange." "I am better than I have been in a long time. I will explain later. I love you." "I love you too." Margaret ended the call and stood. She walked slowly toward Celeste, who was helping Naomi put on her backpack. "Dr. Richardson, may I speak with you for just one more moment?" Celeste turned. "Of course." Margaret's voice was barely audible. "The man who stole from my company, Marcus Blackwell. The FBI just arrested him in Miami. They said they got an anonymous tip with detailed information about his location and accounts." Celeste's expression remained neutral. "That is wonderful news. I am glad he will face justice." "Was it you?" "I do not know what you mean." "Please, I need to know. Did you somehow provide that information?" Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "When you told me about what happened to your company, the name Marcus Blackwell sounded familiar. I thought perhaps I had heard it in passing somewhere. And I may have mentioned to a friend who works with federal law enforcement that I had heard some interesting information on a flight. What they chose to do with that information is up to them." Margaret stared at her. "You helped me, even after everything I did." "I helped Justice Celeste," corrected. "Marcus Blackwell hurt many people, not just you. He deserved to be caught. But you could have just let me suffer. I hurt your daughter. I said unforgivable things." "Well," Celeste met her eyes directly. "That is not who I am, Margaret. And more importantly, that is not who I want Naomi to become. I want her to grow up knowing that we do not fight evil with evil. We fight it with good. We fight it by being so determinedly excellent and compassionate that we leave no room for darkness to take root." Margaret covered her face with her hands. When she lowered them, her expression was one of complete awe. "I do not deserve this. I do not deserve any of this." "Probably not," Celeste agreed. "But grace is not about what we deserve. It is about who we choose to be in the face of other people's worst moments." Naomi tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, are we going to miss our connection?" "No, baby, we have plenty of time." Celeste shouldered her bag and took her daughter's hand. She turned back to Margaret one last time. "The conditions I set, the counseling and the community service, those were not suggestions. I will be checking to make sure you follow through." "I will. I swear I will." "Good. Because the world has enough hate in it. We need you to be part of the solution, not the problem." Margaret nodded, unable to speak through her tears. As Celeste and Naomi walked up the jet bridge, Naomi looked back at Margaret one last time and waved. Margaret waved back, a broken woman who had just been given a chance at redemption she did not deserve. Robert Hayes approached Margaret as she collected her things. "Miss Whitmore, I am a lawyer. If you need any help navigating the legal process with getting your money back or anything else, please call me." He handed her his card. The journalist woman stopped as well. "I am going to write about this, but I want to make sure I get it right. Can I contact you in a few weeks after you have had time to process everything?" Margaret took the card and nodded. "Yes. Please tell the whole story. Show people what grace looks like. Show them what that woman and her daughter did for someone who did not deserve it." As Margaret finally left the aircraft, Captain Morrison stopped her. "Ma'am, I have been flying for 32 years. I have seen fights, medical emergencies, even a heart attack at 30,000 feet, but I have never seen anything like what happened on this flight today." "Neither have I, Captain. Neither have I." The auditorium at the Atlanta Convention Center held 500 people, but it felt intimate somehow. The stage was decorated simply with a banner reading "The Naomi Richardson STEM Scholarship Fund Grand Opening." It was November 2020, exactly 1 year after the incident on the plane. Margaret Whitmore stood backstage, smoothing down her navy dress for the 10th time. She was nervous in a way she had not been in decades. Nervous because this mattered. This was real. "You are going to do great," Elizabeth said, squeezing her sister's hand. "I am so proud of you." Christopher and Catherine stood nearby, both now young adults. "Aunt Margaret, this is incredible," Catherine said. "What you have built in just 1 year?" Margaret shook her head. "I did not build this. Dr. Richardson and Naomi built this. They just did it by showing me what I should have been all along." The past year had been transformative. After the incident, Margaret had immediately enrolled in intensive therapy, both for her grief over Julian's death and her racial biases. She had joined support groups for parents who had lost children. She had volunteered at after-school programs in predominantly black neighborhoods. And she had watched the video of the plane incident, which had indeed gone viral over 200 times, forcing herself to see the monster she had become. But she had also seen the grace that Celeste and Naomi had shown her. And slowly, painfully, she had begun to change. With the recovered money from Marcus Blackwell's arrest and conviction, Whitmore Estates had stabilized. Margaret had then made a decision that shocked her board of directors. She allocated $10 million to create a scholarship fund for black students pursuing degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The Naomi Richardson STEM Scholarship Fund would provide full-ride scholarships, including living expenses and internship placements, to 50 students per year. Today was the official launch, and Celeste and Naomi were in the audience. The MC called Margaret to the stage. She walked out to warm applause, took her place at the podium, and looked out at the crowd. 1 year ago, she began, her voice steady despite her emotions. "I was the worst version of myself. I had let grief turn into bitterness, and bitterness into hate. I hurt an innocent child. I said things I can never take back. I became someone my son would have been ashamed to call his mother." The room was silent. But in the midst of my worst moment, I encountered two people who showed me what true strength looks like. Dr. Celeste Richardson and her daughter Naomi could have destroyed me. They could have demanded I be arrested, prosecuted, publicly shamed, and I would have deserved all of it. Instead, they chose grace. They chose to see my humanity even when I had forgotten I had any. They chose to respond to hate with love, to cruelty with compassion, to violence with healing. Margaret's voice wavered. Dr. Richardson saved my sister's life 15 years ago when other doctors had given up, and last year she saved my life again, not my physical life, but my soul. She gestured to the banner behind her. This scholarship fund is named after Naomi Richardson, who at 7 years old taught me more about courage, forgiveness, and grace than I had learned in 50 years of living. It is my attempt, inadequate as it is, to honor what they taught me and to create a world where fewer children have to experience the hate that I inflicted. Today, I am proud to announce that we will be awarding 50 full scholarships to exceptional Black students pursuing STEM degrees. These students will receive full tuition, room and board, a stipend for living expenses, and guaranteed internship placements at leading technology and engineering firms. The audience erupted in applause. But more than that, Margaret continued, I am announcing that every recipient of this scholarship will also participate in a mentorship program where they will be paired with professionals in their field. Because representation matters. Because seeing people who look like you succeeding in spaces where you have been told you do not belong, that matters. She paused, taking a deep breath. I cannot undo what I did. I cannot take back the pain I caused. But I can spend the rest of my life trying to be better. I can use my privilege, my resources, and my second chance to create opportunities for young people who deserve them. Margaret looked directly at Celeste and Naomi in the third row. Dr. Richardson, Naomi, would you please join me on stage? Celeste stood, taking Naomi's hand. Naomi was 8, now a little taller, her hair in beautiful braids adorned with beads. They walked up to the stage together. When they reached the podium, Margaret knelt down so she was eye level with Naomi. Naomi, a year ago I hurt you. Today I want to thank you. Thank you for teaching me that forgiveness is not weakness, it is the strongest thing a person can do. Thank you for showing me that even people who make terrible mistakes can change if someone believes they are worth saving. Naomi, poised beyond her years, spoke into the microphone Margaret offered her. Miss Margaret, I am proud of you. You were really sad and really mean, but now you are really kind. My mommy always says that people can change if they want to. And you wanted to. So thank you for being brave enough to change. There was not a dry eye in the auditorium. Naomi continued, I want to be a scientist when I grow up. I want to design rockets that go to Mars. And I want other kids like me to know that they can do it too, even when people say they cannot. So, thank you for helping kids like me dream big dreams. Margaret hugged Naomi gently, mindful of the injury she had caused a year ago, even though it had long since healed. You are going to change the world, Naomi Richardson, and I am honored to help you do it. Celeste stepped forward and addressed the crowd. People often ask me how I stayed calm that day on the airplane, how I did not lose my mind when someone hurt my daughter. The truth is, I was terrified. I was enraged. Every instinct in my body screamed for vengeance. But I also knew that my response in that moment would teach Naomi more than any lecture I could ever give her. She needed to see that strength is not about revenge. It is about breaking cycles. It is about choosing love over hate, even when hate seems justified. Celeste put her hand on Margaret's shoulder. What Margaret did was wrong, unequivocally wrong. But what she has done since then is right. She has faced her demons. She has done the hard work of examining her biases and changing her behavior. And she has used her resources to create real, lasting change. That is what redemption looks like. It is not easy. It is not quick. It is painful, humbling work. But it is possible, and it is necessary. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. After the ceremony, as people mingled and the scholarship recipients met their new supporters, Celeste, Naomi, and Margaret found a quiet corner. I still think about that day constantly, Margaret admitted. I still cannot believe I did what I did. and I still cannot believe you responded the way you did." Celeste smiled softly. "I think about it too. And I think about how easily I could have let rage consume me. How easily I could have taught Naomi that the appropriate response to hate is more hate. But you did not. No, because I know where that road leads. It leads to more pain, more division, more broken children growing into broken adults. Someone has to step off that road. Someone has to say this stops here." Naomi tugged on Margaret's sleeve. "Miss Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Do you still miss your son?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Every single day, Naomi. Every single day. I think he would be proud of you now. My daddy died before I was born, but my mommy says he would be proud of me when I do good things. So I think your son is proud of you for doing good things too." Margaret pulled Naomi into a hug. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As the sun set over Atlanta, the three of them stood together looking out at the scholarship recipients celebrating with their families. Young black students who would now have opportunities that might have been closed to them. Celeste spoke quietly, almost to herself. "This is what grace looks like. Not just forgiveness, but transformation. Not just moving past harm, but creating beauty from ashes." The video from the airplane had been viewed over 50 million times. News outlets had covered the story extensively. Celeste had been invited to speak at conferences, churches, schools. The message was always the same. Hate is easy. Grace is hard. But grace is what changes the world. Now, as we close this incredible story, I want to ask you, have you ever had to choose between revenge and grace? Have you ever been in a situation where someone hurt you and you had to decide how to respond? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it made you think differently about forgiveness and redemption, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. But more than that, I want you to ask yourself, what cycles of hate am I perpetuating in my own life? What grudges am I holding that are poisoning me more than they are hurting the person I am angry at? What would it look like if I chose grace? The auditorium at the Atlanta Convention Center held 500 people, but it felt intimate somehow. The stage was decorated simply with a banner reading the Naomi Richardson STEM Scholarship Fund Grand Opening. Make sure you share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Because in a world that seems increasingly divided, we need more stories of people choosing compassion over cruelty, understanding over judgment, and grace over vengeance. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of a community that believes people can change, that love is stronger than hate, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is extend mercy to someone who does not deserve it. Until next time, remember, you have the power to break cycles. You have the power to choose grace, and that choice might just change someone's life. Be the light in someone's darkness. Be the grace in someone's storm. And never underestimate the power of a mother teaching her daughter that love is always, always stronger than hate. This powerful story teaches us that breaking cycles of hatred requires immense courage and intentional choice. When Dr. Celeste Richardson chose grace over vengeance, after her daughter was assaulted, she demonstrated that true strength lies not in retaliation, but in refusing to let someone else's darkness poison your own soul. Her response showed Naomi that their humanity could not be diminished by another person's prejudice. The profound lesson here is that hurt people, and responding with equal hatred only multiplies the pain across generations. Margaret's transformation proves that even those consumed by racist beliefs can change when confronted with unconditional grace and accountability combined. Celeste understood something vital. Punishing Margaret might bring temporary satisfaction, but helping her transform would prevent future children from experiencing similar trauma. This story challenges us to examine our own responses to injustice. Are we perpetuating cycles of bitterness, or are we brave enough to extend mercy while still demanding accountability? Naomi learned that forgiveness does not mean accepting abuse or pretending harm did not occur. Instead, it means refusing to carry the burden of someone else's hatred. The scholarship fund represents redemption in action, turning a moment of violence into lasting opportunities for hundreds of students. Ultimately, this story reminds us that love, wielded with wisdom and boundaries, remains the most powerful force for genuine transformation in our broken world. What would you have done in Dr. Richardson's position? Would you have chosen grace or demanded immediate justice? Drop a comment below, sharing your honest thoughts. If Margaret's transformation inspired you to believe that people can truly change, comment number 1. If you think Naomi showed wisdom beyond her years, comment number 2. And if this story challenged you to examine your own responses to people who have hurt you, comment number 3. This story needs to reach people who have lost hope in humanity's capacity for change. Please hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel so you never miss stories that restore your faith in compassion and redemption. But do not stop there. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Share it with someone carrying the weight of unforgiveness. Share it with someone who has given up on believing people can transform. Thank you for being part of a community that believes grace is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. Thank you for watching until the end and for opening your heart to this profound lesson. May you have the courage to break cycles of hate in your own life. May you find the strength to extend mercy while still standing firm in truth. And may you always remember that choosing love over bitterness is not just good for others, it is the gift you give yourself. Until next time, be the change you want to see in the world.